Welcome back, friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's Ray, and I am doing a giveaway with this December 2020 Hero Arts card kit. So let me just go over a few quick items, and then to get the full details of the giveaway, I will need you to watch part one's video that was just released, and that is linked below. The giveaway is open worldwide to my subscribers. And let's now talk about the prizes. There are two prizes. There is a December 2020 Hero Arts kit that's now sold out. That can be won by anyone within the contiguous U.S. states. And then prize number two is a scrapbook.com gift certificate for $25. And that can be won by my international subscribers. And I'm hoping that that will cover your shipping from scrapbook.com or make a huge dent in your shipping. Do watch part one's video for full details. You will want to note the clues you find in this video because those will be used towards your entry. Now to card number two. Card number two is an A2 card that was fun to make. And here I placed the large sun stamp in my MISTI and am using the chartreuse ink that was a part of the kit to stamp the sun ray. Here I place my scrap piece of acetate on my panel so that I don't transfer any ink as I move my sun ray down. I'm leaving enough space for my sentiment. And once the ink dries, I will prep my panel for heat embossing and am using the smaller sunray stamp and lemon drop ink to stamp that sunray. And if you missed it, clue number one was just displayed on the screen, so do record that. Now I'm applying some embossing powder from the kit, the Prisma, and oh, that is so pretty. You'll notice that I used a dry paintbrush to just remove some of the embossing powder from the area where I'm going to place my sentiment, as I definitely don't want any there. Otherwise, my sentiment won't stamp properly. I'm using the Sea Glass Reactive ink to stamp my sentiment, and am going to stamp that 3 times actually, and use the Hero Arts Sparkle embossing powder to emboss that, and that gives me a really clear sparkly finish. I'm going to use the Sea Glass ink to ink up all of the edges of a white cardstock panel. And this is older ink, so it's not as juicy as I had hoped, but I want to salvage this and use it anyway. So I am just inking, getting as much ink on that paper as I possibly can. And now I am going to trim down my panel so that I leave a border for my inked panel. Because my ink panel isn't as vibrant as I'd like it, I am going to heat emboss it. I figure that'll give it a little more of a shiny edge. I'm also going to mount a piece of cardstock mat that is close to the color of the seagrass. I'm going to mount that directly behind my white panel and then place that on top of my heat embossed sea glass panel, just so that it stands out more, gives it a richer color. I affixed my panel to my sea glass mat. I'm going to trim my sea glass mat down a little, and just so that I have about uh, 1/16 or 1/8, no, about 1/16 of an inch. I could have left a little bit more and wanted to, but actually cut the one side a little more than I had planned. So, of course, I had to make them even, right? I am using a sentiment for the inside of my card from a past Hero Arts kit. Um, and I typically don't stamp the insides of my cards, but this one just seemed to fit. I usually wait and stamp my sentiment, at the point where I know who I will be giving the card to, so that I can try and customize it a bit. And I'm placing my sentiment on my acetate grid to line it up. I'm using that same sea glass ink, which is a little dry, so I'm going to stamp that several times to get a good impression. Here I'm using gems, crystals from Studio Katia, to add some extra sparkle and shine to the card. I do want you to know that I try to edit out a lot of fluff and keep the videos as short as possible, just in general. Card number 3 is also an A2 card, and this was fun to create. I used the small sunray stamp and the inner part of the sunray stamp to create just some random background, with pops of interest, pops of color. I wanted to use all of the colored ink that was in the kit, so that's what I'm doing here. I placed both my stamps on a stamping block and have preconditioned them so that I can hopefully get an even stamped image, so that I only have to stamp once. I did speed this section up quite a bit because, it's random stamping, and I figure you don't want to watch all of that. But there is an area where it looks a little strange because I was too close with my stamping. So what I will do is actually place my sentiment over that. And here I am going to ink up um, just enough of this panel in the thistle to cut out a hexagon. And I'm also stamping up my sentiment. It's a new day, and used some ombre ink by Hero Arts, and was testing that out. And first test run I thought didn't look so good, so I put it in my Misty, and we'll stamp that out a couple of times. I want to emboss my sentiment, so after stamping with the ombre ink, am actually going to stamp with Versamark ink, apply sparkle embossing powder to the sentiment, as well as to the round purple um, inking that I did, because I want that to shine as well, because that's going to be the backdrop for my sentiment. As I'm heat embossing, I thought, oh, it would look great to have some embossed images on my panel. So I went back and stamped some of my half sun images with Versamark ink and heat embossed that as well. I cut my image out of the smallest hexagon die that would work for that size, and then my border or matte cardstock out of the next largest hexagon to give that a really nice border. I'm taking the thistle ink from the stamp set and using that on a piece of lavender cardstock just to get a mat for this card. And I know that I want to go ahead and heat emboss that because I like the way it looked in my prior card. This is a juicier ink pad, so it works out beautifully. I have trimmed my purple panel and am affixing my my focal panel to my card base. And now I'm adding my sentiment. I forgot to mention earlier that I used the My Favorite Things wonky frame die to to die cut my focal panel. I love purple. This is Nouveau Purple Raindrops, and am applying drops liberally to this panel to give it more texture and more interest. Here's a close-up of the sparkle and shine of this card. Card number 4 is a 5x7 A7 card. I love making larger cards, and with this one I used the leftover ink from card number 3 when I was um, inking up the border for card number 3. That left a lot of purple ink on my workstation, and I did not want to waste it. So I thought I would just grab a panel, add a little water, and add that purple ink, that thistle ink. I cut the large Hope die out of white cardstock and cut the border, the base for that as well. And here I have die cut a 5x7 panel using a stitched rectangle die, as well as I've die cut the large fancy cloud die from the center of my panel. Oops, oops, oops. So I didn't remove my masking post-it note from my um, stamped, from my stamp when I started to stamp my sentiment. So I made a boo-boo. I'm going to have to fix that because I am not starting over. I am stamping this out on another just piece of scrap and paying more attention this time. So here is a leftover piece of that ink smushed paper that I used. I actually cut a hope sentiment out of this strip that I will use in a future card, and use the inside pieces in this card on the hope die that I've cut out. So here I'm mounting my panel to my card base and then applying, affixing my sentiment to the panel. And then here's the hope die where I've paper pieced the purple, same purple colors into my hope sentiment. And then I'm affixing an extra cloud to this panel and using my block to hold that down so that it adheres properly. And now I'm using my mono sand eraser to remove a couple of areas that I needed to remove. And I'm going to add my purple raindrops to the top of the card, as well as to the center of the sun image within the hope die. Now let's take a closer look at all of the cards I made in this video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you will participate in the scavenger hunt and that you've gotten all of the clues. There were 3 clues in this video, so hopefully you have all of those ready for your entry